closing down Matthews Arena in style are UMass and the Minutemen, who come away with a 2-0 victory over the number 12th ranked Northeastern Huskies to secure a split of this road series to close out the 2025 calendar year. It gets UMass back to 500 on the season at 9-9-0. Northeastern falls to 10-5-0. Despite this being two Hockey East opponents, it was a non-conference game, so no changes in the conference standings, but for UMass, a feel-good win heading into the winter break. This is the Amherst Insurance Postgame Show. Amherst Insurance, for over 45 years, providing the Pioneer Valley with superior service for home, auto, and commercial insurance. Visit Amherst Insurance at amherstins.com. Colin Casey taking you through what was a great win for UMass to close out the proverbial first half of their 2025-2026 season. Jackson Irving, with a 37-save shutout, stopped 21 shots in the final 20 minutes to propel UMass to victory. And for Irving, it was maybe his best performance in what's been a long line of great performances so far in his junior campaign. He's credited as the number one star in this one. Larry Keenan picking up the second star, which is interesting. He didn't find his way on the score sheet, but I guess the scores really kept in account how strong Keenan was defensively in this game. UMass really was great on the defensive end up until the third period, where they relied on Irving to make some key stops against this dangerous Huskies forward group. And Vaslav Nestersil ends up with the third star, had the empty net goal to put the game on ice. We'll take you through the final statistics in this one last time, as these stats are presented by Coca-Cola. Passionate fans and an ice-cold Coca-Cola. Now that's a winning combo. Fan work is thirsty work. Enjoy a Coca-Cola. Shots on goal end up being 37-16 in favor of the Huskies. UMass only got 4 shots on goal in the third period. They outshot the Huskies 7-6 in the first, but for the rest of the game they were outshot 25-15. And of course, I should say 31-9. Math was way off on that one, but 31-9 they were outshot the rest of the way for this contest. And for UMass at the face-off dot, it was neck and neck for most of the game, but Northeastern was able to kind of push the gap towards the end of this one. They won 14 of the final 23 draws to take a 34-29 advantage in that department. Power plays, after being a huge factor yesterday in Northeastern's 3-2 overtime victory, not much to speak of this time around. Neither team was able to find the back of the net. UMass had a couple of power play looks, and Northeastern went 0 for 4 on the man advantage. Despite peppering Jackson Irving in the third period, they did not find a way past and went 0 for 1 in the final 20 minutes. UMass picks up another 8 penalty minutes after having 10 yesterday for a team that is in the bottom 3, in fact, in the nation in penalty minutes. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the highlights from this affair and one last checkup on the Fort of Northampton out-of-town scoreboard and what went on in the world of college hockey over the last couple of nights. But the Minutemen come away with a 2-0 victory at Northeastern in the final road game for UMass here at Matthews Arena. Back in a moment. This is the Amherst Insurance Postgame Show, and you're listening to Massachusetts Hockey from Learfield. Well, the stands have cleared out here at Matthews Arena for the penultimate time. The Northeastern Huskies will close down the building next week when they take on Boston University in the final game of 2025 for Northeastern, and of course the final game here at Matthews Arena in the building's 115-year history. The Minutemen with a 2-0 win over Northeastern tonight to confirm a split of this weekend road series for UMass. And again, because this game was a non-conference affair, not a whole lot of changes in the Hockey East standings. In fact, none for tonight. But there were changes yesterday as we take a look at the Fort of Northampton out-of-town scoreboard. And it was a little bit of a surprise weekend in the conference, especially for 2 of those series. One of them being Vermont and Boston University, where the Vermont Catamounts on the road at Aganis, just a couple of miles from here, scored a 3-2 win over the Terriers as Thomas Sinclair scored with 21 seconds to go to give the Catamounts the huge victory and push BU back down to 500 on the season. The other surprise this weekend came over the course of both games. The UNH Wildcats go up to Orono at Alfond Arena and sweep the Maine Black Bears. A 1-0 win on night one and a 3-2 victory on Saturday night to come up with their first sweep since 2008 over Maine, as Josh Player had a big goal, the sophomore defenseman, to lead the Wildcats to the win on night two. UConn, 5-2 winners over Merrimack last night. Jake Richard had a goal and an assist to push the Huskies even further in front in the Hockey East standings. However, they had the Boston College Eagles gain some ground and are still just nipping at their heels as the Eagles scored a 3-1 victory over UMass Lowell to come away with a sweep of the Riverhawks. Dean Letourneau, Bruins' first-round pick, with his 9th goal of the season, as Lucas Gustafson had the game-winning goal on the power play, his 2nd of the year. So Greg Brown's bunch up to 10-5-1 on a season in which Boston College maybe was expected to take a little bit of a step back. Taking a look now at the standings, UMass's spot remains unchanged through 8 Hockey East affairs. They are still in 11th in the basement of Hockey East at 2-6 so far, but they are within striking distance of a number of teams. Just ahead of them, tied for 9th, is UMass Lowell and UVM, both at 3-5-0 in conference play, and two teams that have been scuffling. But, of course, the Catamounts with that big win, as I mentioned, over BU. Merrimack sits in 8th with 10 points, but they've played 10 games already, 3-7-0 their record, and that's a 3-way tie up in 5th. Remember, 5th place, the cutoff when it comes to missing the first round and getting a bye. BU, Maine, and Providence all with 14 points, but BU and Maine have played 10 games. Providence only 8 games played so far, so the Friars have a chance to get ahead of that group and springboard into the top 5 at least. In 4th place are the UNH Wildcats, 5-4-0 for Mike Souza's side through 9 games in Hockey East. 15 points for them, 1 point behind the team that UMass just defeated tonight, Northeastern, who don't lose any ground, don't lose any points tonight because this was a non-conference affair. Through 8 games in Hockey East, they are 5-3-0. In 3rd, Boston College with 21 points through 10 games, a 7-3-0 record for the Eagles. And UConn, with 11 games played, 1 point ahead of BC at 7-3-1. So the Eagles with a game in hand and a chance after the break to potentially add to their lead and actually pass UConn and really just put themselves in a great position to potentially win another regular season title in Hockey East play, which has been something they've been accustomed to over the last couple of years. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the highlights from this 2-0 victory for UMass, and we'll hear from Minutemen head coach Greg Carvel as Nathan Strauss chats with him post-game here on the Emerson Insurance post-game show. 2-0 UMass over Northeastern on this Sunday night in December. Back for more on the Emerson Insurance postgame show when we come back. This is Massachusetts Hockey from Learfield. Welcome back to Matthews Arena and the UMass Dining broadcast booth. Massachusetts with a 2-0 win over their Hockey East rival in Northeastern in a non-conference Hockey East matchup in which the Minutemen were seeking revenge on this Sunday night in Boston. The Minutemen fell 3-2 in overtime after erasing a 2-0 deficit in the 3rd period yesterday to pick up a point in a Hockey East affair, so they were looking to rebound tonight. First period, not a whole lot of offense to speak of. Shots on goal were 7-6 in favor of the Minutemen. There were plenty of penalties, though, both sides picking up minor penalties. The Minutemen and the Huskies unable to cash in on their lone power play chances. A 4-on-4 mixed in as well. Neither team could find the back of the net. So with 20 minutes in the books, UMass was hoping to find a spark from anyone on the bench early in the 2nd period. They needed all but one shift from their 3rd line to make something happen. Lucas Kletchka slid one over to Mikey D'Angelo just 33 seconds into the 2nd to give UMass the early lead.
We are underway here to begin the 2nd period. Northeastern on the puck going right to left with Compton high slot, and he'll go find a teammate off to his right. Ritzkovian backhands one through the slot to no one, and Northeastern tries to enter it quickly with a GB, but he gets mashed by D'Angelo, who has it back. Quick try, scores! Mikey D'Angelo, a big hit along the boards. Klechka found him with a little touch pass. He goes off the bar and in. It is UMass 1, Northeastern 0.
Good things happen when you throw the body around, and that was the case for D'Angelo, who after the hit got the puck right back and beat Lawton Zacher for his 6th goal of the season. Klechka picking up his 2nd assist of his freshman campaign. And that made it 1-0 UMass, a score that would remain through 2 periods of play after the Huskies outshot the Minutemen 10-5 in the 2nd period, and then it would become an onslaught in the 3rd. Northeastern peppered Jackson Irving throughout. In the 3rd period, Bo Cosman took a tripping minor at 4:19, and that really compounded things because the Huskies got 4 shots on goal in that minor penalty, that power play, but Irving made a couple of huge saves, including a big standing save to not give up a rebound. The Minutemen would get the kill, and despite it being back to 5-on-5, Northeastern still kept it in high gear and kept putting pressure on the UMass defense, who bent, but they didn't break. Gave up a couple of grade A scoring chances. Irving made a few huge pad saves, including one on Dylan Ritzkovian on a partial breakaway in the final 5 minutes. But it stayed 1-0. And then UMass had to take a D-zone draw with Lawton Zacher on the bench, a 6-on-5 situation for Northeastern. Jack Galanick tied him up, and Vaslav Nestrasil did the rest.
Galanick on the face-off, and it's won by the Minutemen. He'll send it down the ice. Nestrasil! The Loch Ness Monster, an empty netter. He'll empty Matthews Arena for the final time as UMass ices this one with $1:10 to go.
2 years ago, UMass had a pair of freshmen that scored a dozen goals in a season. That was Idar Sunyev and, of course, current junior Jack Musa. Vaslav Nestrasil scored 10 goals, and we're still in December, of course, soon to be January, when the Minutemen return from break. But Nestrasil called an unassisted goal, but you got to give a lot of credit to Galanick, who won the face-off and allowed Nestrasil to send it about 185 feet into the empty net. And that's how this one ended. UMass comes away with a 2-0 shutout win over Northeastern. 37 saves for Jackson Irving, who now improves to 3-4-0 on the year, and that .924 save percentage got a big-time boost with a big win over the number 12 team in the country in the Huskies. When we return, we'll hear from UMass head coach Greg Carvel as Nathan Strauss chats with him following his team's 2-0 victory to close out the calendar in 2025. We'll wrap things up from Boston when we return. This is Massachusetts Hockey from Learfield. And welcome back into the UMass Downing broadcast booth for the final time, not just in 2025, but the final time here at Matthews Arena. The Minutemen ended on a high note. The trips out to Boston here over the last 30 years and win 2-0 over Northeastern thanks to Jackson Irving with a shutout. Colin Casey joined by Nathan Strauss as we wrap things up on the Amherst Insurance post-game show. And Nathan, I got really 2 questions for you as we try to work our way back towards Western Mass on this Sunday night. But the first one, I'll start with this building. 115 years. You and I both called effectively 3 years of college hockey during our time as undergrads at UMass. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised they didn't really have a whole lot of room for us sitting here on press row. And, a building that old, certainly it's tough to adapt and be able to fit everybody there. But over the last couple of years, we've gotten a chance to call games from this historic building. And what are just some of your final thoughts on a place that's seen so much history and finally coming to a close? And, of course, for Northeastern, not a whole lot of home games technically for them coming up, but looking towards the future and a new home, which I'm sure for Husky fans going to be really weird getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I like Matthews Arena not because it's particularly nice or comfortable or functional, but because it's different in the same way that the Gut is different. Like there's a group of stadia out there in Hockey East and in college hockey that are pretty uniform, and this is different. I like it for another reason, which is that in my 7 years between undergrad and now, UMass has never lost a game that I've been to here. They're 6-0 in that time. And lastly, I would say for Northeastern fans, I am very sympathetic to losing a home, especially for fans who are older and who have been coming here for a long time. Obviously, like the Mullen Center has never changed, and other facilities at UMass that maybe should have changed have never changed. And so I haven't experienced that. But I really think that what makes college hockey the best sport in the world is the uniqueness of the home campus sites. And so whether it's Northeastern fans, whether it's student media, I mean, Colin, you and I both lost 2 years of our broadcasting to COVID, where we couldn't call games, period. Like, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that there's going to be some folks on the student media side who do a really good job. Like UMass and Northeastern, it's UMass, Northeastern, and BU who produce the most student media to normal media pipeline, I would say. We've got one of them, Bridget Prue, right behind us right now, waiting for us to decide if we're going to get beers or just driving out to Western Mass. But I am sympathetic to the fact that it'll mean more time and hours spent on the road and having to call home games from the Cross Center in Portland and Songus and Waltham and Bright Landry. So I'm sympathetic to the fact that it'll be a disruption, but also, like, I'm sure whatever new place they put out in a couple of years will be new and novel and incorporate, hopefully, some of the fun parts about this building, except for the falling down seats and the toxic roof that can't even be recirculated and put into things like tables. So I appreciate Matthews for what it was, and good to go out on a high note like tonight.
All right, I'll make the second question a little bit easier and more concise, though. UMass 9-9 heading into the break, coming away with a big victory to close things out against a really good Northeastern team. What are you hoping to see out of them in the second half after this break? A couple of guys going for the Spangler Cup, Musa, Keenan, and, of course, World Juniors with Nestersil. But what do you want to see when UMass takes the ice once again following their exhibition against Simon Fraser in a big home-and-home series with the Terriers?
Consistency and identity. I think UMass had a couple of identity-forming games this first half. The win against Maine was one of them. I think really both, if you view these two games as a tandem, that's one of them as well. I mean, UMass had no healthy skaters aside from what was in the lineup tonight and last night for the Minutemen. You know, you're down your number one defenseman in time on ice, and also, you know, two forwards who would be in your middle six. Want them to get healthy, but then play with the same connectivity that they did tonight. So I really think there's a good team in there. I think, you know, it's too early to rule this team out of anything, even an at-large. And again, if they put together the same kind of second half they did last year, I mean, this team again will turn some pages, or turn some heads rather, in 2026.
But we will turn the page to 2026 the next time we will talk to you on the air. That will be January 9th, the Friday at the Mullen Center. The current ranked number 18 Boston University Terriers will come to town, and the Minutemen will look to try and exact some revenge on the Terriers, a team that defeated UMass in overtime in the hockey's quarterfinals last March. But the Minutemen go out on top in 2025. They go out on top to close down Matthews Arena for at least their portion of the history. 2-0 the final score. UMass comes away with the win. This copyrighted broadcast is an exclusive presentation of Learfield under the broadcasting rights granted by the University of Massachusetts. Reuse of this presentation is prohibited without the express written consent of the University of Massachusetts and Learfield. Announcers are provided by Learfield and approved by the University of Massachusetts. For Khalees Smith back in the studio, for Nathan Strauss to my left, this is Colin Casey reminding you that our next UMass hockey broadcast will be in the new year on Friday, January 9th, 2026, when the Minutemen take on the Terriers. 7 o'clock puck drop, 6:30, the Milton Cat pregame show. The proceeding has been a Learfield presentation of the UMass Sports Network. One final time, your final on this Sunday night in Boston. UMass 2, Northeastern nothing. So long, everyone. So long to Matthews Arena. We'll talk to you in 2026. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.